My name is Delphine Carrington, and at 68 years old, I thought I had seen everything life could offer. I raised 3 children on my own after my husband, Richard, passed away from a heart attack when he was only 47. That was 21 years ago, and since then, every breath I took was for my children. My youngest daughter, Vivienne, announced her engagement last October. She came to my small house in Portland, Maine, on a rainy afternoon, her eyes sparkling with excitement, the kind of sparkle I hadn't seen since she was a little girl, discovering fireflies in our backyard. "Mom, I'm getting married," she practically screamed as she burst through my front door, soaking wet from the autumn rain. I remember hugging her tightly, feeling her heartbeat against mine. At 32, Vivienne had found her person, or so she said. His name was Preston Aldridge, a real estate developer from Boston. I had met him twice, and both times he seemed distracted, always checking his phone, always somewhere else mentally, even when he was sitting right in front of me. But who was I to judge? My daughter was happy, and that was all that mattered to me. "I want you to make my wedding dress," Vivienne said that day, holding both my hands. My heart stopped. I had been sewing since I was 12 years old, taught by my grandmother who emigrated from Ireland with nothing but her sewing kit and her faith. I had made clothes for my children throughout their childhood, prom dresses, costumes, everyday outfits. But a wedding dress was different. It was sacred. "Are you sure, sweetheart?" I asked, feeling tears already forming in my eyes. She nodded enthusiastically. "I want to wear something made with love, Mom. Something that has meaning. Not just some expensive designer dress that everyone forgets about." How could I say no? This was my daughter, my baby, asking me to be part of the most important day of her life. I started planning immediately. That very evening, after Vivienne left, I pulled out my old sewing books and began sketching ideas. I wanted something timeless, elegant, something that would make her feel like the beautiful woman she was. The next morning, I went to the fabric store in downtown Portland. Mrs. Henderson, who had owned the place for 30 years, helped me select the most exquisite ivory silk charmeuse. It felt like water running through my fingers, so delicate and pure. "This is for something special?" Mrs. Henderson asked, her wise eyes twinkling behind her glasses. "My daughter's wedding dress," I said, unable to hide my pride. "Then it will be a masterpiece," she replied, carefully wrapping the fabric. I bought French lace that cost more than my monthly grocery budget, seed pearls from a supplier in New York, and the finest thread I could find. My savings account, already modest, took a significant hit, but I didn't care. This was for Vivienne. For 6 months, my small living room became my workshop. I moved my furniture around, setting up better lighting near the window where the morning sun came through. Every day, from 7 in the morning until sometimes midnight, I worked on that dress. My hands, weathered by age and arthritis, moved carefully over each seam. The arthritis had been getting worse lately, especially in my right thumb, but I pushed through the pain. I took breaks to ice my hands, to stretch my fingers, but I never gave up. I hand-stitched every single pearl onto the bodice. There were exactly 347 of them, each one placed with intention and love. The lace appliques took weeks to attach properly, each delicate flower positioned to create a pattern that flowed like water from the neckline down to the cathedral train. My daughters, both Vivienne and her older sister Corinne, would call occasionally to check on my progress. Corinne, who was 38 and lived in Seattle with her husband and 2 children, was always supportive. "Mom, you're working too hard," she would say during our video calls. "It's a labor of love," I would respond, showing her the latest detail I had added. Vivienne, however, rarely asked about the dress. Our conversations became shorter as the months passed. She was busy with wedding planning, she said, choosing venues, selecting flowers, tasting cakes. Preston's family was helping her, she explained. They had connections, resources, money that could make things happen. "That's wonderful, dear," I would say, trying to hide the small hurt I felt at being excluded from these plans. I told myself it was normal. Modern brides had so many decisions to make, so many vendors to coordinate with. She was simply overwhelmed. But deep down, in that place where mothers store their worries and fears, I felt something shifting. The tone of her voice when she spoke to me had changed. There was an edge to it, an impatience that hadn't been there before. Still, I sewed. I poured every ounce of love I had into that dress, believing that when she saw it, when she wore it, everything would be right again between us. Our Chapter 2, The First Cracks. March arrived with unexpected warmth, melting the last of Maine's stubborn snow. I had been working on the dress for 5 months, and it was nearly complete. The bodice was finished, the skirt assembled, and I was working on the final details of the train. My arthritis had worsened significantly. Some mornings, I could barely make a fist, and getting out of bed required a determination I hadn't needed in years. I started taking stronger pain medication prescribed by Dr. Yamamoto, my physician of 15 years. "Delphine, you need to rest those hands," he said during my appointment. "The inflammation is severe. What are you doing that's causing this much stress?" I showed him pictures of the dress on my phone. His expression softened immediately. "It's beautiful," he said quietly, "but it's hurting you." "Some things are worth the pain," I replied. He adjusted my medication and gave me exercises to do, but we both knew I wouldn't stop working until the dress was done. Vivian came to visit on a Tuesday afternoon in mid-March. I had texted her the day before, telling her I wanted to show her the nearly completed dress. She arrived 2 hours late, something that was becoming a pattern. "Sorry, Mom," she said, breezing in without hugging me. Traffic was terrible, and I had a lunch meeting with Preston's mother and the wedding planner. She looked different. Her hair was professionally styled, her clothes clearly expensive, designer labels I recognized from magazines. Preston's influence, I assumed. "And come," I said, unable to contain my excitement. "I want you to see it." I had hung the dress on a special mannequin I had borrowed from Mrs. Henderson. The afternoon light coming through my living room window made the silk shimmer, and the pearls caught the light like tiny stars. I watched Vivian's face as she saw it for the first time. I was looking for tears, for joy, for that moment of recognition when a bride sees her dream dress come to life. Instead, her expression was blank. She circled the mannequin slowly, not saying anything. "Well?" I asked, my voice smaller than I intended. "What do you think?" She touched the lace carefully, her finger tracing one of the appliques. "It's nice, Mom. Nice. Not beautiful. Not perfect. Not exactly what I wanted. Just nice. I still need to finish the hem and add the final buttons on the back," I said quickly, trying to fill the awkward silence. "And I was thinking of adding just a touch more lace at the neckline. What do you think?" Vivian pulled her hand away from the dress and turned to face me. "Actually, Mom, I need to talk to you about something." My stomach dropped. I knew that tone. It was the same tone she used when she was 16 and had wrecked my car, or when she was 23 and had dropped out of graduate school after one semester. Preston's mother, Constance. "She knows this amazing designer in New York," Vivian began, not meeting my eyes, "and she offered to buy me a dress from his collection. These are dresses that cost tens of thousands of dollars, Mom. It would be from his new collection, something nobody else has." I felt like I had been slapped. "But you asked me to make your dress." I know, she said, her voice taking on a defensive edge. "But that was before I understood what kind of wedding this was going to be. Preston's family is important, Mom. There will be politicians there, business people, society people. The wedding is being featured in Portland Monthly magazine. I need to look." She trailed off, but I finished the sentence in my mind. She needed to look like she belonged in Preston's world, a world where handmade dresses, made with love by aging mothers with arthritic hands, weren't good enough. "I see," I said quietly. "Don't be like that," Vivian said, her tone turning irritated. "This isn't about you. This is my wedding, my day. I need to make the choices that are right for me and Preston." "Of course," I managed to say. "It's your wedding." She left 20 minutes later, kissing me quickly on the cheek and promising to call soon. I stood in my living room, looking at the dress I had spent 5 months creating, and cried for the first time since Richard died. But I didn't give up. I told myself she was just stressed, overwhelmed by the pressure of marrying into the Aldridge family. Surely, when she saw the completed dress, she would change her mind. I worked even harder. The pain in my hands became unbearable, but I pushed through it. I finished the hem, added delicate buttons covered in the same silk fabric, and even hand-embroidered her initials on the inside of the dress, near her heart. I invited her back 3 weeks later to see the finished product. This time, she agreed to come, but she brought someone with her. Chapter 3. The Betrayal. Vivian arrived with Preston's mother, Constance Aldridge. I had met Constance only once before, at the engagement party held at the Aldridge family estate in Cape Elizabeth. She was a woman in her early 60s, impeccably dressed, with the kind of cold elegance that came from generations of old money. I had prepared tea and small sandwiches, the way my mother taught me to do when receiving guests. Constance walked into my modest home as if she were touring a museum of poverty, her eyes taking in my worn furniture, my simple decorations, my life. "Mrs. Carrington," she said, extending her hand but not really offering warmth. "How lovely to see you again. Please, call me Delphine," I said, trying to be gracious despite the knot forming in my stomach. "The dress is in the living room," Vivian said quickly, clearly wanting to get this over with. I led them to where the dress hung, now complete in all its glory. I had stayed up until 3 a.m. the night before, making sure every detail was perfect. The silk had a subtle sheen, the lace created shadows and light, the pearls made the bodice look like something from a fairy tale. Constance circled the dress slowly, just as Vivian had done weeks before. She said nothing for a long moment, her perfectly manicured hand occasionally touching the fabric. "Well," she finally said, her voice carrying that particular tone wealthy people use when they're about to say something cruel while pretending to be kind. "It's certainly homemade." The word landed like a stone in my chest. "I think it's charming," Constance continued, in a rustic sort of way, very folksy, almost like something you'd see at a country fair. Vivian said nothing. She just stood there, looking at the floor, her face flushed. "Of course," Constance went on, now addressing Vivian directly. "This isn't quite what we discussed for the aesthetic of your wedding. The photographer we hired specializes in high-fashion wedding photography. This dress is rather simple for what we're planning." I found my voice. "I made this dress with 6 months of work. Every stitch is done by hand. The fabric alone cost over $800. Constance smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I'm sure it was quite the investment for you, dear. That's very sweet. But you must understand. Vivian is marrying into a family with certain standards. The wedding dress needs to make a statement." "It does make a statement," I said, my voice stronger now. "And it says that love and dedication matter more than a designer label." "Oh, how quaint," Constance said, and I knew then that she was enjoying this. "But in our world, everything is about presentation. Surely you understand that." I looked at my daughter, waiting for her to defend me, to defend the dress, to defend the 6 months I had spent in pain creating something beautiful for her. She said nothing. "Vivian?" I said quietly. She finally looked up at me, and what I saw in her eyes broke my heart. It wasn't love or gratitude or even guilt. It was embarrassment. She was embarrassed of me, of my dress, of my modest home, of my simple life. "Mom," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe Constance is right. Maybe the dress doesn't quite fit with the wedding we're planning." Something died in me in that moment. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but quietly, like a candle being snuffed out. "I see," I said. "Don't be upset," Constance said, her voice now taking on a false cheerfulness. "We'll make sure you're properly acknowledged in the program. Wedding dress lovingly made by the bride's mother." "How does that sound?" "We're going with the designer dress from New York," Vivian said, still not meeting my eyes. "But maybe I can wear yours for the rehearsal dinner or something." The rehearsal dinner. My 6 months of work, my pain, my love, relegated to a rehearsal dinner where people would barely notice it. After they left, promising to call me about wedding details, I sat in my living room and looked at the dress for a long time. The afternoon light made it glow, just as I had imagined it would. It was perfect. It was everything a wedding dress should be, but it wasn't enough. I wasn't enough. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about Vivian's face, about her silence, about how she had let Constance humiliate me in my own home. I thought about the years I had raised her alone, the sacrifices I had made, the times I had gone without so she could have what she needed. And I realized something painful and true. Sometimes the people we love most are the ones who hurt us deepest, not because they hate us, but because they've learned to value the wrong things. Chapter 4. The decision. The morning after Constance's visit, I woke up with unusual clarity. My hands hurt less than they had in months, or perhaps I simply stopped caring about the pain. I made my coffee, sat at my kitchen table, and made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to let them treat me this way. I called Corinne in Seattle. It was only 5 a.m. her time, but I needed to talk to my oldest daughter, the one who had always been reliable, steady, honest. "Mom," she answered, her voice thick with sleep. "Is everything okay?" I told her everything. About the 6 months of work, about Constance's visit, about Vivian's silence. I told her about the pain in my hands, about the money I had spent, about the love I had poured into that dress. Corinne listened without interrupting. When I finished, there was a long silence on the line. "Mom," she finally said, her voice tight with anger. "That's unacceptable. Vivian should be ashamed of herself." "I don't know what to do," I admitted. "You take the dress back," Corinne said immediately. "You don't let them treat you like this. You're not a doormat, Mom. You never have been." "But it's her wedding," I protested weakly. "And you're her mother," Corinne countered. "The mother who raised her, who sacrificed everything for her, who spent 6 months in pain making her something beautiful. If she doesn't value that, if she's too caught up in impressing her new family to appreciate what you've done, then she doesn't deserve that dress." After we hung up, I sat with Corinne's words. She was right. I had spent my entire life putting my children first, sacrificing my own needs and wants for theirs. When had I become someone who accepted disrespect? When had I taught my daughter that it was acceptable to treat people who love you as if they were beneath you? I called Vivian that afternoon. She answered on the 4th ring, sounding distracted. "Mom, I'm kind of busy right now. Can this wait?" "No," I said firmly. "It cannot wait. I need to come pick up the wedding dress." There was a pause. "What? Why?" "Because I'm taking it back." Another pause. Longer this time. "What do you mean, taking it back?" "It's my dress." "No," I said, surprised by how steady my voice was. "It's my dress. I made it. I paid for it. I spent 6 months of my life creating it. And since you've decided it's not good enough for your wedding, I'm taking it back." "Mom, don't be ridiculous. We talked about this. I'll wear it for the rehearsal dinner." "I don't think so," I said. "You don't get to dismiss something I created with love and then use it as a consolation prize. Either it's your wedding dress, the one you originally asked me to make, or it's not part of your wedding at all." "You're being unreasonable," Vivian said, her voice rising. "This is typical of you, Mom. Always making everything about yourself. This is my wedding, not yours." Those words might have hurt me yesterday. Today, they just made me more certain of my decision. "You're absolutely right," I said calmly. "It is your wedding, and you should wear whatever dress makes you happy, whatever dress fits into the Aldridge family aesthetic. But this dress, this particular dress, stays with me." "Preston's mother was right about you," Vivian said, her voice cold now. "And she said you'd try to make this difficult, that you'd try to guilt trip me." "Constance said that?" I asked, though I wasn't really surprised. "She said you'd be bitter about us choosing the designer dress. She said working-class people often resent success." Working-class people. As if my life, my struggles, my hard work were something to be ashamed of. As if raising 3 children alone after losing my husband made me somehow less valuable than people like the Aldridges. "I'll be there tomorrow at 10 to pick up the dress," I said. "Please have it ready." I hung up before she could respond. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about the person my daughter had become. Or perhaps this was who she had always been, and I had been too busy being a mother to notice. I thought about all the times over the years when she had been unkind to service workers, dismissive of people she considered beneath her socially, obsessed with status and appearances. I had attributed it to immaturity, to growing pains, but Vivienne was 32 years old. At what point did personality flaws stop being excused and start being character traits? I arrived at Vivienne's apartment the next morning at exactly 10 o'clock. She lived in a luxury high-rise in Portland's Old Port District, the kind of building with a doorman and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. Preston had bought the apartment for her when they got engaged. The doorman recognized me from previous visits and let me up without calling first. I knocked on Vivienne's door, my heart pounding but my resolve firm. She opened the door wearing yoga clothes that probably cost more than my monthly utility bill. Her face was cold, closed off. "It's in the bedroom," she said without greeting me. I walked past her into the apartment. It was decorated in that minimalist style that wealthy people favored, all white and gray with occasional pops of color from expensive art pieces. Nothing like the warm, cluttered home where she grew up. The dress was hanging in her bedroom closet, still in its protective garment bag. I took it down carefully, checking to make sure it hadn't been damaged. "Are you happy now?" Vivian asked from the doorway, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "You've made your point." I turned to face her, holding the dress. "What point do you think I'm making? That you're hurt, that I'm ungrateful, that I've changed, and you don't approve of who I've become. Have you changed?" I asked quietly. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Of course I've changed. I've grown up, Mom. I've moved beyond our little working-class life. I've found someone who can give me the life I always wanted, the life I deserve." "And what life is that?" I asked. "A life where I don't have to worry about money, where I belong to the right clubs, know the right people, attend the right events. A life where I matter." "You've always mattered," I said, feeling tears starting to form but refusing to let them fall. "You mattered when you were a little girl playing in our backyard. You mattered when you graduated high school. You mattered every single day of your life, not because of who you knew or how much money you had, but because you were my daughter and I loved you." "That's not enough," Vivian said, and I realized she truly believed it. "Love doesn't pay bills. Love doesn't open doors. Love doesn't get you into the country club or get your photo in society magazines." I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and saw a stranger, someone I had raised but didn't recognize, someone who had traded authentic connection for social status, who had chosen appearance over substance. "I hope Preston's family gives you everything you're looking for," I said finally. "I hope their money and connections fill whatever emptiness you're trying to fill." "Don't be dramatic," Vivian said, rolling her eyes. I walked toward the door, carrying the dress carefully. Just before I left, I turned back one more time. "When you walk down that aisle in your expensive designer dress, surrounded by important people and expensive flowers, I want you to remember something. The dress I made, the one you rejected, was made with love. And love, real love, is the only thing that lasts. Everything else, all the status and money and connections, they fade. But love endures. Whatever helps you sleep at night, Mom," Vivian said, already turning away. I left without saying goodbye. Chapter 5. The Unraveling. The drive home from Vivian's apartment was a blur. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, my arthritic hands protesting, but I barely felt the pain. My mind was replaying the conversation over and over, each word cutting deeper than the last. When I got home, I carefully hung the dress back on its mannequin in my living room. The late morning sun streamed through the windows, making the silk shimmer exactly as I had envisioned. It was still beautiful, perfect, even. But now it represented something else entirely, something I hadn't planned for when I started this journey 6 months ago. It represented a relationship that had broken. I sat on my worn couch and did something I rarely allowed myself to do. I cried, not the quiet, dignified tears I had shed when Richard died, not the controlled emotion I had shown my children when they were young and needed me to be strong. I cried the way you cry when you realize that love, no matter how pure or dedicated, isn't always enough. My phone rang repeatedly throughout the day. Vivian called 7 times. I didn't answer. She left voicemails that progressed from angry to defensive to slightly panicked. "Mom, you're being ridiculous. Call me back. I can't believe you're doing this. You're ruining my wedding. Preston says you're being manipulative. Is that what this is? Are you trying to manipulate me? Fine. Don't call me back. See if I care." Corinne called too, and her I answered. "Mom, Vivian just called me crying. She says you stole her wedding dress." "I took back the dress I made," I corrected. "I know, Mom, I know. And honestly, I'm proud of you. She needed to understand that her actions have consequences, but I need to prepare you for something." "What?" "She's not going to let this go easily. She's going to try to make you the villain in this story. She's already calling family members, telling them you're being unreasonable. Aunt Patricia called me an hour ago asking what was wrong with you." I sighed. Patricia was Richard's sister, a woman who had always been kind to me but who valued family harmony above all else. Of course, Vivian would call her. "What did you tell Patricia?" I asked. "The truth. That Vivian asked you to make a dress. You spent 6 months making it, and then she rejected it because her future mother-in-law convinced her it wasn't good enough. I also told Patricia about the arthritis and how much pain you've been in. You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did, because you won't defend yourself, Mom. You never do. You let people walk all over you, and then you wonder why they keep doing it." Was that true? Had I spent so many years being accommodating, being the peacemaker, being the one who sacrificed, that my children had learned to expect it? Had I, in trying to be a good mother, taught them that my needs didn't matter? Over the next few days, the calls kept coming. Extended family members, friends from church, even neighbors who had somehow heard about the drama. Everyone had an opinion. Some sided with me. "She asked you to make the dress. She should wear it," said Mrs. Henderson from the fabric store when I went in to return some unused supplies. Others thought I was being stubborn. "It's her wedding day," said Carol, a friend from my book club. "And can't you just let her be happy?" But the question that haunted me was different. Could I let my daughter treat me this way and still call it love? 8 days after I took the dress back, something unexpected happened. Corinne called, her voice urgent. "Mom, you need to sit down for this." "I'm already sitting." Preston's mother, Constance, has been talking. She's been telling people in her social circle about the difficult mother-in-law she has to deal with. Someone who was at a charity luncheon recorded her without her knowing and sent it to me. Why would they do that? Because what she said was horrible. "Mom, she called you pathetic. She said you were trying to sabotage Vivian's wedding because you're jealous of their money. She said you've always been bitter about being poor and that you're taking it out on them." The words should have hurt. Instead, I felt something else. Clarity. "Send me the recording," I said. "Mom, I don't think." "Send it, Corinne." She did. I listened to it 3 times, each time feeling less emotional and more resolved. Constance Aldridge had revealed exactly who she was, a woman who valued social standing above human decency, who thought money gave her the right to be cruel, and my daughter was choosing to become part of that family, to adopt their values, to prioritize their approval over her relationship with me. The recording spread quickly through the extended family network. Suddenly, those who had criticized me for taking back the dress went quiet. Aunt Patricia called to apologize for initially taking Vivian's side. "I didn't realize what you were dealing with," she said. "That woman, Constance, she's poisonous. And Vivian, oh, Delphine, I'm so sorry. That's not the girl we raised." But that was exactly the point. Vivian was 32 years old. She wasn't a girl being led astray. She was a grown woman making choices, choosing status over substance, choosing the Aldridge family's approval over her own mother's dignity. On day 12, Vivian showed up at my house unannounced. It was raining, just like it had been the day she announced her engagement. But this time, there was no sparkle in her eyes. She looked terrible. Her hair was messy, her eyes red and swollen from crying. She was wearing jeans and an old sweatshirt, nothing like the designer clothes she had been favoring lately. "Mom," she said, her voice breaking, "can I come in?" I stepped aside and let her pass. She walked into the living room and stopped when she saw the dress, still on its mannequin, still perfect and beautiful and completely unwanted. "I messed up," she said, turning to face me. "I messed up so badly, and I don't know how to fix it." I said nothing, waiting. Preston's family, they're not who I thought they were. Constance, she's been... God. Mom, she's been awful. Not just about you and the dress, but about everything. She criticizes how I dress, how I talk, who my friends are. Nothing I do is ever good enough for her. "And Preston?" I asked quietly. Vivian's face crumpled. Preston agrees with her. About everything. When I tried to defend you, when I told him that recording of his mother was cruel, he said I was being oversensitive. He said I needed to understand that his mother comes from a different world, a better world, and I should be grateful she's trying to help me fit in. Chapter 6. The Reckoning. Vivian collapsed onto my couch, the same couch where she used to curl up as a little girl to watch movies, where I had held her when she had nightmares, where we had sat together planning her future when she graduated high school. But now she looked small and broken, a stranger in a familiar place. He said I should be grateful, she repeated, her voice hollow. Can you believe that? Grateful that his mother tears me apart every chance she gets. I sat down in the armchair across from her, maintaining some distance. Part of me wanted to rush over, hold her, tell her everything would be okay. But another part, the part that had been wounded and dismissed, needed to hear more before I could offer comfort. When did you realize this? I asked. The recording, she said, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. When Corinne sent it to me, I couldn't believe it at first. I thought maybe it was taken out of context or edited or something. So I confronted Constance. You did? She nodded. Yesterday. I went to her house in Cape Elizabeth, and I asked her about it. I thought she would deny it, or at least apologize. Instead, she laughed. She actually laughed. Mom, she said, darling, I was just being honest. Your mother is pathetic, and the sooner you accept that and distance yourself from that life, the better off you'll be. I felt something cold settle in my chest, but I kept my face neutral. And what did you say? I asked. I told her you weren't pathetic. I told her you were the strongest person I knew, that you raised 3 kids alone, that you worked 2 jobs to put us through school, that you never complained or gave up even when things were hard. Vivian's voice broke, and she said, Then why does she live in that tiny house? Why does she drive that old car? Why does she shop at discount stores? Strong people succeed. Vivian, your mother is just persistent. The word hung in the air between us. Persistent. As if my entire life, all my struggles and sacrifices, could be reduced to stubbornness rather than strength. I lost it, Mom. I screamed at her. I called her a snob and a horrible person. And then Preston came in. He was there. He had been in his father's study. He heard everything. And he took her side. He said I was being disrespectful to his mother, that I owed her an apology, that she was only trying to help me become the kind of woman who could be a proper Aldridge wife. Vivian stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the rain. That's when I realized what I was doing. I was becoming someone I didn't recognize. Someone who valued the wrong things, who treated people like they were beneath me just because they had less money or didn't move in the right circles. She turned back to face me, tears streaming down her face. I treated you exactly how Constance treated you. Like you weren't good enough. Like your love and your work and your sacrifice didn't matter, because it wasn't expensive enough or prestigious enough. Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I sat quietly, letting her words settle. An apology was a start, but it wasn't enough. Not yet. What happened after Preston took his mother's side? I asked. I left. I went back to the apartment and started really thinking about everything. About who I've become over the past year. About the things I've said and done. About you and that dress. She walked over to the mannequin, reaching out to touch the lace gently. This is the most beautiful thing anyone has ever made for me. I can see every hour you spent on it, every detail you agonized over. I can see your love in every stitch. And I rejected it because it didn't fit some image of who I thought I should be. Yes, I said simply. You did. She flinched at my directness, but I wasn't going to soften it. She needed to hear the truth. I called off the engagement, Vivian said quietly. What? This morning. I called Preston and told him I couldn't marry him. Not like this. Not when it means becoming someone who treats her own mother like an embarrassment. I stood up, shocked. Vivian, that's a huge decision. You need to think carefully. I have thought carefully, she interrupted. I've been thinking about nothing else for days. Mom, do you remember what you taught me when I was little? You used to say, you can tell a lot about a person by how they treat people who can't do anything for them. I did remember. It was something my own mother had taught me. Preston and his family, they treat everyone like transactions. Like people only have value if they can offer something. Money, connections, status. You taught me that everyone has inherent worth, that kindness matters more than wealth, that character is more important than appearance. And I forgot that. I forgot everything you taught me because I was seduced by the idea of an easier life. Marriage to Preston would have been comfortable, I said carefully. Comfortable, she repeated. Yes, financially comfortable, socially comfortable. But would I have been happy? Would I have been able to look at myself in the mirror and like who I saw? She sat back down on the couch, looking exhausted. The answer is no, Mom. I would have become exactly like Constance. Cold, judgmental, cruel, using money and status as weapons to make myself feel superior. I moved to sit beside her, close but not touching. Calling off a wedding 15 days before the date is going to cause a lot of problems. I know. The deposits are non-refundable. Preston's family is furious. He's threatening to sue me for half the cost of everything. Constance has already called several of her friends to make sure I'm blacklisted from their social circles. She laughed bitterly. Apparently, I'm a gold-digging opportunist who never belonged in their world anyway. How do you feel about that? I asked. She thought for a moment. Relieved, actually. That world, Mom, it's exhausting. Everything is about appearances, about saying the right thing, wearing the right clothes, knowing the right people. There's no room for authenticity or vulnerability or real connection. Everyone is performing all the time. We sat in silence for a few minutes, the rain pattering against the windows. Can you forgive me? Vivian finally asked, her voice small. Could I? That was the question I had been asking myself since she walked through my door. She had hurt me deeply, dismissed my love, treated me as if I were an embarrassment. But she was also my daughter, my baby, the little girl who used to bring me dandelions from the yard, who would climb into my lap when she was scared, who told me I was the best mom in the world. Forgiveness isn't the same as forgetting, I said slowly. What you did hurt me, Vivian, more than you probably realize. And I can't just pretend it didn't happen because you've apologized. I know, but you're my daughter. I love you. I've always loved you, even when you were being cruel, even when you were choosing the Aldridges over me, even when you rejected the dress I made with my own hands. Vivian started crying again, harder this time. Love doesn't mean accepting bad treatment, I continued. It doesn't mean being a doormat. I took that dress back because I needed you to understand that I have worth, that my work has value, that your mother deserves respect. You do, she said through her tears. You deserve so much more than what I gave you. Going forward, I said, things need to change between us. You need to treat me with respect. You need to value what I offer, not measure me against some arbitrary standard of success. And you need to understand that my life, my choices, my circumstances, they're not things to be ashamed of. I've lived a good life, not a rich life, not a prestigious life, but a good one. I know, Mom. I know that now. I finally reached over and took her hand. Then yes, I forgive you. But you need to forgive yourself too. You made mistakes, but you recognized them. You chose to do the hard thing, to call off a wedding rather than marry into a family that would have destroyed who you are. That takes courage. She squeezed my hand tightly. What am I going to do now? I gave up my lease on the apartment. I quit my job because Preston said I didn't need to work. I don't have anywhere to go. You can stay here, I said. Your old room is exactly as you left it. We'll figure out the rest together. Chapter 7. The Aftermath. Vivian moved back into my house that same day. It felt strange having her there again, seeing her clothes in the closet of her childhood bedroom, hearing her footsteps in the hallway, but it also felt right, like something broken was being slowly repaired. The next few days were chaotic. Preston called repeatedly, alternating between anger and attempts at manipulation. First, he accused Vivian of ruining his reputation. Then he tried to convince her she was making a mistake, that she would never find anyone as good as him. Finally, he threatened legal action for breach of promise. Let him sue, Vivian said, looking at her phone with disgust. I'd rather be broke and free than rich and miserable. Constance, true to form, had indeed been spreading rumors in her social circles. According to mutual acquaintances, Vivian was now portrayed as unstable, manipulative, and lower class. Someone who had tried to marry above her station and cracked under the pressure of joining a real family. It doesn't matter, Vivian told me when I expressed concern. Those people were never really my friends anyway. They were Preston's friends, Constance's friends. They only tolerated me because they thought I was going to be an Aldridge. But I could see it did matter, at least a little. She checked her social media less frequently, but when she did, I noticed the tightness around her eyes, the way her shoulders would slump. Being systematically cut out of a social circle, even one you chose to leave, still hurt. Corinne flew in from Seattle a week after Vivian called off the engagement. She walked into my house, took one look at Vivian, and hugged her tightly. "Proud of you, little sister," she said. "It takes guts to walk away from that kind of money." "How are Jeremy and the kids?" Vivian asked, pulling back. "Good. They send their love. The kids made you a card." Corinne pulled out a homemade card with crayon drawings and messages from her 7- and 9-year-old. Vivian's eyes filled with tears as she read it. "Tell them Aunt Vivi will visit soon." That evening, the three of us sat in my living room, eating takeout Chinese food and talking. Really talking, in a way we hadn't done in years. Corinne told us about her life in Seattle, about the struggles of raising 2 young kids while working full-time as a teacher. Vivian opened up about how isolated she had felt in Preston's world, how every day had been an exhausting performance of being someone she wasn't. "I remember when he proposed," Vivian said, "playing with her Lomen. Everyone was so excited. His family, my friends, even me. But looking back, I don't think I was in love with Preston. I was in love with what he represented. Security, status, a life where I wouldn't have to worry about money." "But you weren't happy," I observed. "No," she admitted. "I wasn't. I told myself I would be, eventually, that once I adjusted to their world, once I learned all the rules and became the right kind of person, then I'd be happy. But it doesn't work that way, does it?" Corinne shook her head. "You can't find happiness by becoming someone you're not. Trust me, I learned that the hard way too." "You did?" Vivian asked, surprised. "Remember when I was dating that investment banker in my 20s, Ryan?" I remembered. Ryan had been wealthy, ambitious, and completely wrong for Corinne. "I tried so hard to fit into his world," Corinne continued. "But I changed how I dressed, changed my interests, stopped talking about teaching because he thought it was a cute hobby, rather than a real career. It took me 2 years to realize I was erasing myself for someone who didn't even really see me." "What made you leave?" Vivian asked. "He took me to his parents' anniversary party, 50 years of marriage, huge celebration at their country club. And I watched his mother all evening, how she interacted with his father, how she spoke to the staff, how she carried herself. And I realized that would be my future. 50 years of performing, of pretending, of slowly disappearing into a role that was never really me." "How did you know Jeremy was different?" I asked. Corinne smiled. "Why, because when I told him I was a teacher and that it was my calling, not just a job, he asked me to tell him about my students. He wanted to know their stories, their challenges, what I loved about teaching. He saw my career as important, as valuable, even though it would never make me rich." She turned to Vivian. "That's what real love looks like. It's not about changing for someone or hiding who you are. It's about being seen, really seen, and valued for exactly who you are." The wedding dress still hung in my living room, a constant presence. Sometimes I would catch Vivian looking at it, her expression unreadable. "Are you going to keep it?" she asked one day. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to donate it, let someone else wear it who will appreciate it. Another part wants to keep it as a reminder. A reminder of what? That love isn't always enough, that you can pour your heart into something and still have it rejected, but also that you have to stand up for yourself, even when it's hard, even when the person you're standing up to is someone you love." Vivian walked over to the dress, running her fingers along the silk. "It really is beautiful, Mom. I wish I could go back and see it the way I should have seen it from the beginning." "You can't go back," I said gently. "None of us can. We can only go forward." 2 weeks after calling off the engagement, Vivian had to deal with the wedding cancellations. The venue, the caterer, the florist, the photographer, all had to be contacted and informed. Most were understanding, though the deposits were lost. Preston's family had threatened to sue for their portion of the costs, but so far nothing had materialized. "They're probably just trying to scare you," Corinne said during one of our evening conversations. "Rich people love threatening lawsuits. Half the time, they don't follow through." But the emotional cost was harder to measure. Vivian had lost not just Preston, but her entire social circle, her job, her apartment, her plans for the future. She was 32 years old and starting over from scratch. "Is this what rock bottom feels like?" she asked one night, lying on the couch with her head in my lap, the way she used to when she was little. "I don't know if this is rock bottom," I said, stroking her hair, "but it's certainly a low point." "How did you do it, Mom?" After Dad died, when you were left alone with 3 kids and no money and no plan. How did you keep going? I thought about those dark days after Richard's death, about the fear and uncertainty, about lying awake at night, wondering how I would pay the bills and feed my children and hold our lives together. I didn't have a choice, I said honestly. You kids needed me, so I got up every morning and did what needed to be done. Some days that was easy, most days it wasn't, but I kept going because the alternative was giving up, and I couldn't do that to you. Did you ever think about remarrying? Having someone to help carry the load? Sometimes, I admitted. There were a few men over the years who expressed interest, but I was so busy being a mother, working my jobs, trying to keep our heads above water, that I never had the energy to invest in a relationship. And honestly, most of them wanted a woman who could focus on them, not a widow with 3 kids and a mountain of responsibilities. Do you regret it? I considered the question. I regret that you kids grew up without your father. I regret that I couldn't give you more, materially, but I don't regret how I spent my life. You 3 were my priority. You were worth every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every worry. Vivian was quiet for a long moment. Even now, even after how I treated you. Even now, I said firmly. You made mistakes, serious ones, but you recognized them and tried to make them right. That's all any parent can hope for. Chapter 8. Rebuilding. 3 weeks after the canceled wedding, Vivian started looking for work. She had a degree in marketing but had left her last position when Preston suggested she focus on preparing to be an Aldridge, which apparently meant lunching with Constance and attending charity committees. The job market was tougher than she expected. Her resume had a gap, and when she tried to explain it to potential employers, she could see their judgment. A woman who had quit her job to prepare for a wealthy marriage didn't inspire confidence. Maybe I should go back to school, she said one evening after another rejection. Get my MBA or something. That's one option, I said. But it's expensive, and you'd need to figure out how to support yourself during it. I have some savings, she said. Not much, but some. Preston's family kept pushing me to merge our finances before the wedding, but I held off. Thank God. That was smart. She laughed bitterly. It wasn't smart. I just felt uncomfortable giving up that last bit of independence. If I had been smarter, I would have never gotten involved with Preston in the first place. You can't think that way, I said. Every experience teaches us something, even the painful ones, especially the painful ones. Mrs. Henderson from the fabric store called me that week. Delphine, dear, I have a proposal for you. What kind of proposal? My daughter has been after me to expand the store, add a custom sewing section. You know, for people who want something made specifically for them. I thought of you immediately. Would you be interested in running it? I was surprised. Mrs. Henderson, I appreciate the thought, but I'm 68 years old. I'm not sure I have the energy for a full-time position. Not full-time, she clarified. Maybe 20 hours a week. You'd take commissions for custom pieces, wedding dresses, formal wear, alterations. You'd set your own schedule, choose which projects to take on, and I'd handle all the business side of things. It was tempting. I had loved making Vivian's dress, despite how it ended. The work itself had been satisfying, the creation of something beautiful from fabric and thread. Can I think about it? I asked. Of course. But Delphine, I've seen your work. That wedding dress sitting in your living room is exquisite. You have a gift. It would be a shame to waste it. After I hung up, I looked at the dress again, seeing it with new eyes. Maybe it didn't have to be a symbol of rejection and heartbreak. Maybe it could be something else, a testament to skill, a demonstration of what was possible, a beginning rather than an ending. When I told Vivian about Mrs. Henderson's offer, her face lit up. Mom, that's perfect for you. You should absolutely do it. I'm nervous, I admitted. What if my arthritis gets worse? What if I take on a project and can't finish it? Then you'll figure it out, Vivian said simply. And you always do. Her faith in me was touching, especially after everything we'd been through. Actually, Vivian said slowly, I might have an idea. What if I helped you? I have a marketing background. I could handle the business side, social media, advertising, client relations. We could work together. I looked at her carefully. Is that what you want? Or is that just the easiest option right now? Honestly, I don't know what I want anymore, but I know I'm good at marketing. and I know you're incredibly talented. Together, we could build something real. The idea of working with my daughter, of spending that time together, was appealing, but I also worried about her settling for something convenient, rather than pursuing what she truly wanted. Let's make a deal, I said. You apply for marketing jobs, real jobs in your field. If you get offers, you take them. But in the meantime, if you want to help me with Mrs. Henderson's proposal, we'll do it together. Deal, she agreed. We went to see Mrs. Henderson the next day. Her store was busy, customers browsing bolts of fabric, picking out patterns, consulting with the staff about projects. She greeted us warmly and led us to her office in the back. I've been thinking about this for months, Mrs. Henderson explained, showing us her plans. There's a market for custom sewing, especially for people who want something unique for weddings, proms, special events. But I don't have the skills for the actual creation. I'm a businesswoman, not a seamstress. She looked at me directly. You, Delphine, have skills I've watched develop over 30 years. You have an eye for design, steady hands despite your arthritis, and most importantly, you pour your heart into your work. People will pay for that level of care and craftsmanship. And what would my role be? Vivian asked. If you're interested, you could handle the marketing and client relations, build our online presence, manage social media, create a portfolio of Delphine's work. Eventually, we might even develop a website where people can view designs and book consultations. It was more ambitious than I had expected, but also exciting in a way I hadn't felt in years. Let me show you something, I said. Wait here. I drove home and carefully transported Vivian's wedding dress back to the store. When I hung it on the display mannequin in Mrs. Henderson's office, both women were silent. And this is what I can do, I said simply. This is the level of work I can offer. Mrs. Henderson walked around the dress slowly, examining every detail. Delphine, this is museum quality. This is the kind of work that could charge thousands of dollars. Thousands, I repeated, skeptical. Look at the hand stitching, the way the lace is applied, the detail work on the bodice. This represents hundreds of hours of skilled labor. In New York or Boston, a dress like this would sell for $5,000 to $10,000, minimum. I felt dizzy. I had never thought of my work in those terms. It was just something I did, something I loved, not something with that kind of value. This could be our showcase piece, Vivian said, her marketing mind already working. And we photograph it professionally, use it in all our advertising. Custom creations that rival designer labels. We could even tell the story behind it, without going into the personal details, obviously. The story of a mother's love, Mrs. Henderson said softly. That's what this dress is, and people will respond to that. Over the next few days, we hammered out the details. I would work 20 hours a week, taking on commissioned projects. Vivian would work part-time doing marketing and client relations while still applying for full-time marketing positions. Mrs. Henderson would provide the space, materials, and business infrastructure. We called it Carrington Custom Creations. The first order of business was photographing the wedding dress. Vivian hired a professional photographer, a friend from college who owed her a favor. We spent an entire afternoon in the store, lighting the dress perfectly, capturing every detail. When we saw the final photos, even I was impressed. The dress looked ethereal, timeless, like something from a fairy tale. Mom, Vivian said quietly as we looked at the images on the photographer's laptop. This is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. I was so blind before. How did I not see this? You weren't ready to see it, I said, but you see it now. That's what matters. Chapter 9. Moving Forward. Carrington Custom Creations launched 6 weeks after Vivian called off her wedding. Vivian created a stunning website, social media accounts, and a portfolio featuring the wedding dress prominently. Within 2 weeks, we had our first inquiry. A young woman named Sarah, 24 years old, was getting married in 6 months. She had been to every bridal shop in Portland and couldn't find anything that felt right. Everything is either too modern or too traditional, she explained during our consultation. I want something timeless, but also uniquely me. I listened carefully as she described her vision, making sketches as we talked. She wanted a tea-length dress with a vintage feel, something her grandmother might have worn but updated for today. She wanted sleeves, a rarity in modern wedding dresses, and a neckline that was elegant but not revealing. "Can you do that?" she asked, looking between Vivian and me. "Yes," I said confidently. "I can absolutely do that." We discussed timeline, budget, and design details. When I quoted her the price, based on Mrs. Henderson's guidance about material costs plus labor, Sarah didn't hesitate. "That's less than half of what the boutiques wanted for their designer dresses," she said, "and yours will be custom, made just for me." After she left, Vivian hugged me tightly. "Ah, we have our first real client." "We do," I agreed, feeling a flutter of excitement mixed with nervousness. That evening, I began sketching designs for Sarah's dress. My hands hurt, but I took my medication and used the exercises Dr. Yamamoto had given me. The pain was manageable when I was doing something I loved. Over the next few weeks, Carrington Custom Creations started gaining traction. Vivian's social media posts were getting attention, particularly the photos of the original wedding dress. People commented asking about prices, availability, and how to book consultations. "I'm getting inquiries from as far away as Boston," Vivian reported during one of our evening debriefs. "Word is spreading." But not all attention was positive. One afternoon, Vivian came home looking shaken. "Preston sent me a message," she said, showing me her phone. The message was long and bitter. He accused us of profiting from the dress that was, rightfully, his, since he had paid for the wedding it was supposed to be worn in. He threatened legal action again, claiming the dress was community property, or breach of contract, or something equally ridiculous. "He's just angry," I said, though my stomach churned with worry. Can he actually do anything legally?" "I don't think so," Vivian said. "You made the dress before I was even engaged. It was always yours, and he never paid you for it or signed any contract." Still, the threat hung over us. Preston came from a family with resources and connections. If he decided to make trouble, he could make our lives difficult. "Don't respond," I advised. "Don't engage. Sometimes the best way to deal with bullies is to ignore them completely." A week later, something unexpected happened. A woman named Margaret contacted us through the website. She was in her 50s, planning her second wedding after being divorced for 10 years. "I don't want a traditional white dress," she explained during our video consultation. "I want something that reflects who I am now. Confident, independent, celebrating a second chance at love." We talked for over an hour. Margaret was a professor of literature, remarrying a colleague she had known for years. Their wedding would be small and intimate, held in their backyard with close friends and family. "I want to feel beautiful," she said, "but also authentic. Does that make sense?" It made perfect sense to me. I designed her a dress in champagne silk, with hand-embroidered details inspired by her favorite poetry. It had 3/4 sleeves, a flowing skirt, and a neckline that was both elegant and age-appropriate. Working on Margaret's dress reminded me why I loved sewing. It wasn't about creating something expensive or impressive. It was about understanding what someone needed and creating it with care and attention. When Margaret came for her final fitting, she cried. "I feel like myself," she said, looking in the mirror. "I feel beautiful and authentic and ready to start this new chapter." After she left, Vivian turned to me with tears in her eyes. "That's what I stole from you with the original dress. That moment of joy, of seeing your creation appreciated. You're giving it back now," I said. "And every client we help, every dress I make that brings someone joy, that's you giving it back." As spring turned to summer, our client list grew. We had prom dresses, mother of the bride outfits, evening gowns for charity galas, and 3 more wedding dresses. I hired an assistant, a young woman named Elena, who was studying fashion design at the community college. My arthritis remained a challenge, but I learned to manage it better. I worked shorter sessions with more breaks. I did my exercises religiously, and I accepted that some days I simply couldn't sew. On those days, I did consultations or worked on designs while Elena handled the physical sewing under my supervision. Vivian, meanwhile, had received several job offers from her applications. 2 were from good companies in Portland, 1 from a startup in Boston. What should I do?" she asked one evening. "The Boston offer pays more, but it would mean leaving you in the business. Is it what you want?" I asked. She was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know. Part of me wants to take it, to prove I can still succeed in the corporate world, but another part of me loves what we're doing here. I love working with you, helping these clients, building something meaningful. There's no wrong choice, I told her. But you need to choose based on what will make you happy, not what will prove something to Preston or his family or anyone else. A few days later, Vivian made her decision. She turned down all 3 offers. I want to stay here, she said. I want to build this business with you. Not because it's convenient, or because I don't have other options, but because this is where I want to be. I hugged her tightly, feeling a mixture of joy and concern. Are you sure? I don't want you to have regrets later. I'm sure, Mom. This is the first time in years I've felt like I'm doing something that matters. Not just making money or impressing people, but actually helping people feel beautiful and confident on important days in their lives. That same week, something happened that brought our past crashing back into the present. Corinne called, her voice urgent. Mom, Vivian, you need to see this. She sent us a link to a local society blog, the kind that covered charity events and high society weddings. There was an article about Preston Aldridge's new engagement to Vivian's best friend from college, Marissa. Are you okay? I asked Vivian, watching her face as she read the article. Actually, she said slowly, I'm fine. Better than fine. I'm relieved. The article detailed how Preston had moved on quickly after his unfortunate broken engagement with an unsuitable match. Marissa came from an old Portland family, someone Constance approved of immediately. The wedding was planned for September, just 4 months after Vivian was supposed to marry him. Marissa was at every wedding planning meeting, Vivian said, her voice tight. Every single one. She was always so helpful, so supportive. I thought she was being a good friend. Maybe she was, I said carefully. Maybe Preston pursued her after you broke up. Or maybe, Vivian said, she was waiting in the wings all along. Maybe that's why it was so easy for him to move on. The betrayal of a friend on top of everything else should have devastated her. But instead, Vivian seemed almost energized by it. You know what this means? She said. It means I dodged a bullet. Can you imagine if I had married him and then found out he had feelings for Marissa? Or if I had spent years in that family, trying to be good enough, only to be replaced the moment I stopped performing? She was right. The pain was real, but so was the relief. I don't miss him, Vivian said wonderingly. I don't miss Preston at all. I miss the idea of him, the fantasy of what that life could have been. But the reality was slowly erasing myself to fit into someone else's picture.